We are going together to make chocolate chip cookies, some of my favorite. So what you see here is all of the ingredients that you'll need and even all the tools that you'll need, because whenever we get to cooking, we want to be really prepared. We want to have everything ready for us and no surprises. So here's what you need to make chocolate chip cookies. We will need 112 grams of butter. This has been microwaved for exactly 40 seconds, and you can still see some butter here, but you've got a lot of melty stuff too. That means it's nice and soft, but it's not too warm. You also need 100 grams of white sugar. You need 55 grams of brown sugar. You need 10 milliliters of vanilla extract, or I like to use maple syrup. You also need 240 grams of flour and 2.5 milliliters of baking soda and of normal salt. You can see them here. 2.5 milliliters is a little tricky. That's actually half a teaspoon of each of those things. So even though I know it's a dry ingredient and it's a weight, my European measuring spoons, they've got milliliters on them. So that's why I keep saying milliliters for dry ingredients. The very last thing that you need is an egg. And it's best to have the egg not from the refrigerator. Have it warm at room temperature because it actually helps with your baking. Now for our equipment, we need very few things. We just need a mixer. It really is easier with a mixer. And I use this is called a paddle, in order to mix cookie dough. It's the best for it because cookie dough will get stuck in one of these things, a whisk. If you have a hand mixer at home, it'll have 2 whisk beaters. That's okay too. You can mix them with a spoon, but it's really hard to do the first few steps unless you've got some power. And I almost forgot, but certainly cannot forget, the chocolate chips. We're going to use about a cup of these, but really I don't measure my chocolate chips when I make chocolate chip cookies. I just dump enough chocolate chips in there to make myself happy. So here's how we make our chocolate chip cookies. Whenever you're baking a cookie, it's important to start with sugar and butter because we're going to cream them, okay? So we take our butter and we put it into our mixing bowl. Plop. And we get all the good butter out of there with our spatula. We can really never bake without a spatula. Very important stuff. Then we take both kinds of sugar. Sugar number 1 and sugar number 2. Now this might be a little loud, so I will probably pause my video while I mix. But what we're going to do is we're going to cream the butter and the sugar together. That means we're going to beat these two things together on medium speed until they're a little bit fluffy and very pale and really mixed together. So we'll take about 2 minutes to do that. And we're back. After just a couple of minutes of mixing, you can see here that my butter and my sugar are creamed really well. They're kind of on the side of the bowl and everything, and that's okay. Next, we're going to add our egg, and we're going to add our vanilla or maple syrup, whatever you choose. So here's how I like to crack my egg. I'm going to move my spatula so I have an empty bowl to put my eggshell in. Now, I like to crack it on the edge of the bowl, and just one tap, and then I open the shell, and in goes the egg. And then I can get rid of my shell. And now I need a towel because I'm egged. There we go. And I need my correct measuring spoon for my vanilla or maple sugar. Since I need 10 milliliters of this, which is the same as 2 tablespoons or 2 teaspoons, I'm just going to pour. There's number 1. Now the reason I like to use maple syrup is it just gives it a little bit of a different flavor. It's very American Canadian flavor of cookie, but we love it. And 2, that's all the syrup I need, and I'll put my measuring spoon in my dirty bowl and put my lid back on. This is so important. When I was little and learning to bake, I didn't put the lids back on things. And ooh man, would I spill lots of stuff. So always make sure you put your lids back on. Now I have to mix this again, but just until it's mixed together. So we might be able to put up with the noise. Let's see. That's not so bad. Now, once I see that it's a bit mixed up, I'm going to stop the mixer and I'm going to scrape down the bowl. This is a very important step because otherwise everything won't get mixed all the way in. I'm going to turn it up just one more speed. Now I can see it's having some trouble, and that's because I need to scrape down the bowl. So I'm going to use my spatula to get all of the butter and sugar off of the paddle and off the sides of the bowl. And scrape it, scrape it, scrape it, and even maybe scrape up the bottom a little bit, because that will help it to mix all the way through. And then I'm going to make sure that I get all the butter and the sugar off of my spatula, or I'm losing dough. There we go. Now I think we can mix again. I'm going to pause and just get this mixed up. Okay, so I mixed it on medium for just another minute or so, and you can see it's very pale and fluffy, and that's exactly the way we want it to be. So now, here's what I have to do with my dry ingredients, my flour and my baking soda, which is also known as bicarbonate. I didn't know that until I moved to Europe. We only ever call it baking soda. And I'm going to mix the bicarbonate and the salt into my flour. That's where I'm going to start. And that's why I have these two spoons here. One of them is going to be for scooping cookies, but the other spoon is for stirring up the salt and the bicarbonate and the flour. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly add the flour, whoopsies, slowly add the flour to my wet ingredients. I don't want to do it all at once. I want to do it spoon by spoon while the paddle is turning. I just have to be careful. I can start with a couple scoops in there. I just have to be careful that when this starts to get thicker, it doesn't throw flour back at me, which is a very real thing. So that's why we go nice and slow. Always on low speed, and we wait until the flour is somewhat gone before we put more in. And I'm just going to add it spoonful by spoonful. Alrighty, now let's have a look. We have finished cookie dough. Now we could actually add all sorts of things to this cookie dough if we wanted to. They wouldn't have to be chocolate chip. You could add your favorite dried fruit. You could add different flavors of candy or Smarties or M&Ms. There's lots of things. You could add nuts. There's lots of things that you can add to this cookie dough. For today, though, we're definitely going with chocolate chip. So first things first, you don't want to waste a single cookie. So you have to get all the cookie dough off of the paddle as much as you can. Now, there's a reason why a lot of people don't eat the raw cookie dough. If you remember, we put an egg in this dough. We did. And eggs, when they are uncooked, can get you a little bit sick. So we don't tend to eat raw dough that has eggs in it, okay? So we'll scrape down the sides. And you might be wondering, well, Miss Dani, when in the world are you going to add the chocolate chips? Well, my friend, now's the time. We're going to take the bowl off of the mixer, and it's time to add chocolate chips. I told you I didn't like to measure, and I took the paddle off because I don't want to mix in my chocolate chips using the big mixer. This mixer is very powerful, and it will actually break my chocolate chips up and kind of smear them. I don't like it. I want whole, yummy chocolate chips. So, we pop the top, and I'm just going to sprinkle as much or as little as I want. I'm going to start with that. Now, when we mix in chocolate chips, we're just stirring with our spatula, but you want to press on the dough because otherwise you'll have lots of chocolate chips on the outside and none in the middle of your dough. And that's no fun. We want chocolate chips in all of our cookies. So you're going to stir it really well. Might need mom or dad to help with this because it's sticky, sticky dough. Now for me, this is plenty of chocolate chips. For you, it might not be, and that's okay. So, look at that. We have our cookie dough finished. Now that's a lot of cookie, so I got to get that off. I'm going to use the spoon that I'm going to use to help me form the cookies on our cookie sheet to get all of that yummy cookie dough off of the spatula. Okay, now comes the best part, which is the making of the cookies. Now, of course, I know that all of you, like me, washed their hands before we began, because I'm going to have to put my hands on some cookie dough. And we don't want to put our hands on anything if we haven't washed them. So here's what we do. We make sure our space is clean, and we're going to move the cookie dough off camera. And right here is where I'm going to put my cookie sheet. Move the mixer a little bit to the side too. Okay. Now, these cookies, they will spread out some, and they probably won't poof up too much. We don't want them to, but we want to give them lots of space to breathe. Now, you can make these cookies quite small, or you can make them quite big. I like big cookies, so I take a whole spoonful. Now, these aren't really going to stick to my hands, which is the good news. They will if I touch them too long. But if I just take them in my hands like this and roll it around in a ball, I want it to be ball-shaped. I gotta roll, though. If you touch it with your fingertips too much, it sticks. So, and then I plop this down right about here. Now, I'm only gonna put about 9 cookies on this sheet because I want them to have lots of room to grow. Now, look at that. We have 9 magical cookies ready to bake. We are going to bake these in our preheated oven for about 9 to 10 minutes only. They're not gonna look finished. I'll show you when they're done, but I promise you they will be baked and they will be delicious. So, we'll see you in 9 minutes. The other thing you can do, by the way, you can see I still have cookie dough left. This recipe makes between 12 and 16 cookies. What I can do is I can make another sheet pan, put some more paper on it, and I can get the second batch of cookies ready while the first one bakes. And here we have our big, beautiful cookies. Now, you can see what I mean. They don't look browned, and I don't want them to be. In fact, these might even be a little bit overdone because it's hard to see, but there's even a little bit of brown around the edges. And since I love nice, soft cookies, I want them to look just like this. And look how far apart we put them, and still they came almost close together. Here, they're sharing a little bit of a border, and that's okay. They're going to be fine. So what we'll do is we're going to let these cool down for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then if we want to eat one warm, that's the time to do it. If not, we still want to take them off the cookie sheet in about 5 or 10 minutes. Once they won't break if I touch them. Usually I just take the paper and I lift them off and I put them right here on my cooling rack. And we just don't want them to stay on the cookie sheet for longer than about 5 minutes because the cookie sheet's so hot that they keep cooking. It's crazy stuff. And then after they're off the cookie sheet, you can either eat them warm or save them for later. So that is chocolate chip cookies.